So this is lesson 2, creating relative frequency tables. First, we're going to look at a survey where 200 high school students were surveyed to see if they prefer to watch football or soccer, and then asked if they lived in the US or outside of the US. So here is our frequency table, and what we're going to do is convert it to a relative frequency table. So first, we're going to find the row sums here. So I add for football 113 and 17, and I get 130. People like football. And then for soccer, I do 7 plus 63 and get 70. Then I can find my overall total by adding 130 plus 70. So that's 200 people. And then from there, I find how many people were born in the US and born outside of the US. So 113 plus 7 gives me 120 people born in the US. And then 17 plus 63 gives me 80 people born outside of the US. So now what you do is divide each number by the grand total to get your relative frequency table. So here we would do 113 divided by 200. And I get 0.565. And then here I would do 7 divided by 200. And that is 0.035. And then here I can express this total here, and I can go 0.035 plus 0.565, and I would get 0.6. And then here I go 17 divided by 200. And that gives me 0.085. And then this is 63 divided by 200. Which is 0.315. And that gives me 0.4 for a total. Oops. Down here. And then if you notice, this is going to be 1 or 100%. If I converted the decimals 2 spots, this would be 56.5% of the people surveyed like football and were born in the US. 3.5% would like soccer and were born in the US. And then, moving on here, this would be 8.5% of people like football and were born outside of the US. And then 31.5% of people surveyed liked soccer and were born outside of the US. So here I would add 0.565 and 0.085 and get 0.65. And then here I could actually do 1 minus 0.65 to figure out what this is, but I'm going to add 0.035 plus 0.315, and I get 0.35. So here, what percent of the respondents were born in the US and like football? Well, that here, I'm going to move the decimal 2 spots, and it's 56.5%. Move that down. What percent of respondents were born outside of the US and like soccer? So out of the US and like soccer, move it 2 spots, and it's 31.5%. Here, what percent of the respondents like football? Well, we look over here in the football column, move it 2 spots, and it's 65%. Here, what percent of the respondents like soccer? So here's soccer, move it 2 spots, and that is 35%. What percent of the respondents were born in the US? So born in the US is 0.6. Move it 2 spots, I have to add a 0, and that becomes 60%. What percent were born outside of the US? It's 0.4, so move it 2 spots, add a 0, and that becomes 40%. Of the respondents that like football, what percent were born in the US? So remember here, of the people that liked football, so that is here, we have 113 people that like football in the US. So 113 out of, and then our total is just the people that like football. So we have 113 plus 17. And when I add that, that gives me 130. So 113 out of 130 equals 86.92%. Now we're going to look at putting that in R. So I'm going to show you how to do just that. So here what I do is put in my rows, 113, 7, 17, 63, put in my row names, born in the US, out of the US, column names of football and soccer, and then show my data. And then I can convert that into a table. Now what I'm going to do is find the row sums of this. So if I did the row total, if you look at this, let me display that for you to see, so you can see that. It just says 113 were born in the US, 70 were born outside. So now I do the total is the sum of the row totals. And then what you can see here, if I were to go back and show you, well, what is my total? It'll just say it's 200. So now I just take the data and divide it by the total, and it gives me that relative frequency table. So just moving back, that's kind of what that gives me there. So now what we're going to do is look at these marginal frequencies, and we're going to make a bar plot of that data. So a table is a nice way, but we can do a bar plot of the people, how many people like football and the other, kind of make a bar graph out of that, and then born in the US, born outside of the US, and make a bar graph of that. So what we're going to do is put in my data again. It's really already in there, so that doing this is redundant. However, in this situation, we're going to find the row sums of the data, and then we're going to make the total is a sum of the row sums, and then put that in there. And then we're going to find the column sums. And then we're going to do a bar plot of, so when I did the plot data, it's the column sums. So if you want to see, well, what is this plot data? Actually display that. And it just says 120 people like soccer, or 120 people like football, 80 like soccer. And then I can do a bar plot of the plot data, put the main title sports preference, the Y label is going to be the count, X label is sport, and then I can change the two bars to be blue and red. So it just shows you there the count of people that like football and soccer. And then if I want to change that to a relative frequency, what I can do is just divide that by the total. And then this just becomes the percentage of people that like either. So 60% of the people surveyed like football, 40% like soccer. And then again, we can do the row sums. So the plot data is just the row sums. And then this just becomes a count of people that were born in the US and born outside of the US. And then I can change that to a relative frequency table by dividing by the total times 100. So that just changes it to a percent. And then I did this, the national origin is born in the US or outside of the US, and then this just becomes a percent. So now you're going to do just this, the practice problems. So make sure to work on the practice problems, write the code on your own, struggle a little bit, and then you can come back and look at the R code for some help.